It's not always the advantage to be the last, but at least the advantage is that I'm the last, and after me there will be really break. So hopefully you will have enough sufficient strength to listen to the presentation about social housing in transition countries, about the context of how we should perhaps perceive social housing in these countries, and especially about the need for innovations in this field. Let me start with several words about the context and perhaps about the history of public and social housing in this region, because we cannot understand what's happening now and what are the possibilities for the future if we don't know how it was created, how it happened. During the socialism before 1990, there was no special definition of social housing in the region. And the right to housing was guaranteed by the state to all citizens, not only to those who were worse off, but to all citizens. Sometimes it took 10 years to get housing, but it was guaranteed to all of them. It was part of this specific system was part of the overall ideology that wanted to make housing a pure public good, completely outside of the market, and also part of the early plan to liquidate private property, not only in industry, agriculture, but also in the field of housing. For that purpose, the political representatives in that time used different interventions, like expropriation of already existing private housing, like very strong price and rent regulations, and especially extensive, massive public housing construction subsidies. The consequence was that the very large public housing sector appeared. But can we call it social housing? I don't think so, because behind there was completely different ideology, completely different policy goal. Also, the position of the tenant was completely different than what we normally understand as a tenant in classic housing, in social housing. Because in that time, I think that most of the disposal rights that are normally connected to ownership were conducted by tenant and not by the landlord. And in fact, later we started to call the specific tenure quasi-home ownership, because it was the tenant who received the user rights for the rest of the life. It was the subject for inheritance. It could be transferred to other relatives, also transferred in the black market. So in this way, we really cannot talk about classic tenancy. Very soon, this regime found out that that doesn't have enough financial resources to meet the goal, and became characterized by unskilled management, bureaucracy, low quality construction like prefab housing, which became characteristic feature for all post-socialist states, and the maintenance of housing, especially in central locations, and also these illegal practices like clientelism and corruption during the allocation of housing. And because this housing was not in fact social housing, therefore, after 1990, after regime change, it could be very soon be given away, could be very quickly privatized. And then we really understand the process, why it did happen. In that time, there were several international organizations coming to the regions recommending what we should do in this housing policy. And one of them very powerful was the World Bank. And I think this is the citation from one World Bank report from Robert Buckley, recommending that the surest way how to solve the situation is to give away, to privatize everything, to privatize public housing, and that equity concerns should not be a legitimate obstacle to these market reforms. Of course, final decision was on the national governments, but these recommendations was mostly taken by national governments in these regions. And right to buy policies, which means giving right to tenant to buy the housing that they occupy under very low price or at no cost, was applied in this region very quickly. There was no discussion about long-term risk of superior homeownership models, and there was very biased discussion about equity consequences of this privatization. Why it was applied so quickly? Why this recommendation was taken so quickly into real national policies? I think it was because the governments in the regions wanted to retain housing privileges of already existing public occupants and use housing as a shock absorber from pains that were from other liberalization steps of transformations. And privatization of public housing, so shifting from quasi-home ownership to full home ownership at no cost, was a very good mean how to do it. There were few exceptions. Czech Republic and Poland, the right to buy policy was not applied. But here, very conservative form of rent control, flat rent control, and very strong tenant security has been preserved from the communism. And then municipalities were unable to introduce any effective way of management of housing stock because they could not increase the rents and they had to subsidize it. And therefore they saw the sale of public housing also as a good way how to get rid of this unwanted gift and started to privatize also. So it's estimated in the Czech Republic 70 to 80% of public housing has been already privatized. Equity consequences, as I said, were not very much discussed, and if there was any discussion, there was very much bias. Only now we see the regressive character of wealth redistribution from privatization in recent scientific papers. Those who were left outside of privatization, I would say, were the real losers of the whole transformation, especially rural households who could not use the privatization, of course, of urban flats, but also urban poor households who didn't have enough money even to buy for this very low price or had some rent arrears and they could not take part in the privatization. These people were very often also moved out from attractive locations because there was such a high pressure to privatize almost everything that if they lived in attractive locations, they were pushed away. Disappearance of public housing had especially dramatic effect on new households because it became difficult to find affordable rental housing for new households in need, especially when they face some form of discrimination. And during later years, the process of social and spatial segregation accelerated. So original social mix that we knew from the communism and socialism was very gradually and now I think quite sharply substituted by social segregation. What the governments did in the regions, the governments, I think, very occasionally introduced some new subsidies, new supply-side subsidies, how we call subsidies for construction of social housing. And these subsidies were very often, after several years of operation, abolished or reduced because they seemed to be unsustainable and inefficient. If defined at all, social housing in this region is understood as very low quality, residual public housing for the poorest part of society. And of course this definition leads also to amplifying the social exclusion processes rather than reducing them. So I feel very large, and I hope that you also, the necessity for searching for new social housing schemes. What can be the solution then? One of them that has been applied not only in socialist regions but also in many Western countries is to build again massively social housing, prefab housing estates like we already noticed in the past. I think that this is definitely not the solution. So come back and to repeat the mistakes of the past. I think that now the trends in social housing are rather different and that we should really not repeat the mistakes of the past, like was the bureaucratic managements, interference of politicians into allocations, abuse, corruption, long waiting lists. We remember how long it takes when the flat was allocated. In that time also there was an ideology of battle with the market, that we should not cooperate with the market, but market is bad and this kind of policy is good. Also it was connected with very passive behavior of households. They just subscribed on the waiting list and wait several years when the flat was allocated. This is really not what we expected, how people should acquire housing. There was very limited offer. Also the result was that some flat was allocated, but it was only one. And it was on the, if you don't like it, then you should go out and you will not have a chance to find any other flat. I think that recently social housing gets the form which is hardly generalizable into one simple approach. It includes different range of programs and landlords and tenures, different semi-tenures between rental and owner-occupied housing. The main goal is the social inclusion, but also legitimate targeting. This means that we should not support those people who have already high incomes and can acquire housing by themselves. This is, I think, not very legitimate now, especially when we see how public budgets are restricted by DAPs. And we should also follow market-friendly phase. We should not compete with the market, but look some cooperation with the market. This concept is characterized by flexibility, innovations, change, and giving people more choice. The imperatives of giving people more choice, that there is not only one flat that you have to accept, but there are more flats, more alternatives that you can select, and having high respect for preferences may support the sustainability of social housing, because people will have high alternatives, more options to select, and will be more, and their preferences will be more satisfied. An example, a short example, that we are now trying to pilot in the Czech environment under the concept of social housing for households who are disadvantaged in the market, cannot find affordable and especially non-excluded long-term rental housing. We call this pilot a system of guaranteed housing, and in that pilot we distinguish only two target groups of households. First groups are households with sufficient competence for maintaining long-term rental housing, and the second group with, that need some competence training. For both of groups, for the first immediately and for the second group after some competence training, there is system of guaranteed housing. Before I present how this system is operated, I would say that I am convinced that the approaches that are applied in one country are not simply transferable to another one. This specific tool has been offered because in the Czech environment there are specific conditions that can allow application of such a tool. Firstly, private rental housing forms probably the main part of rental housing stock now. Due to privatization, private rental housing perhaps now exceeded the stock of municipal housing. And also it's legal. It's very important to say that most of the contracts are legal. It's not part of the illegal black economy. Housing policy up to now was skewed towards home ownership, so it's time to balance it more and to support more rental housing. The success rate for reintegration of households that are living in spatially excluded areas or are even homeless is extremely low. So it's extremely low success to get people back from streets to long-term rental housing. And finally, there is no sign of physical shortage of housing in this country. Of course, there are some regional differences, but generally we cannot say that there is an acute physical shortage of housing. So the focus of this approach is on existing housing. So in consequence, we offered the tool, the guarantees that would be provided to private landlords in this country that would cover the main risk relating to tenancy, like rent arrears, damages, and cost of judicial proceedings. And for that, private landlords will offer long-term contracts for target households. The tenants will be able to register their primary residence and will get housing allowance to cover the costs. Suitable flats will be selected by operators of the system, which can be both NGOs and municipalities. This is very simply how this system should be operated. Between landlord and tenant there will be rental contract. By operator of the system, which will be municipality or NGO, will select the tenant and conclude special contract with the tenant, and will select the landlord and as well as the flat of the private landlord and put them all together. After that, he will transfer the documents to guarantor, and guarantor will provide the landlord with the guarantees. The guarantor in the pilot will be the state, but after some period of time we hope that commercial companies, insurance companies will see some kind of interesting business in this field and will be a guarantor instead of the state. Final slide shows some advantages of this system, that for operators it's faster and cheaper solution than construct new housing. It's a provision of spatially non-excluded housing. It's not building somewhere at the edge of the city, but looking at the existing housing stock and selecting flats in existing buildings. It's a provision of long-term rental contracts, which is really the problem here. It increased importance of rental housing in the system, and also it supposes more active operation of NGOs, who are not providing housing in this country very much, but hopefully there will be more. And it's a market-friendly phase. In future, hopefully there will be no state involvement in it. So, thank you very much for your attention.